Hello, welcome to another Magic the Gathering video. This is an accompaniment to the unboxing I did earlier for Spiraling Doom. So what I thought I'd do is just lay the deck out, and that way we can get a better idea of how the various cards interact, because this particular deck plays very much on the synergy of the cards. And in effect, you can sort of divide the sort of deck into two, really, I suppose. You have the part of the deck over here which provides the underlying sort of stability for the deck, and then these cards over here, most of which are one-offs, which provide our food, if you like, for the birthing pod, and ultimately our ways of dealing with certain decks. Because what you'll find with this particular deck is it is a very reactive deck. So what cards you're going to choose to get hold of using the birthing pod are very much going to be dependent on what sort of deck your opponent is playing. So just looking over this side first of all, we obviously have the mana base down here, which is its green-black primarily. We've got a couple of evolving wilds in here, which obviously allow us to go and search for basic land to try and fix our mana. It does cause the land to come into play tapped. Then we've got a card like Grim Backwoods, which we can tap for colourless mana, but we can also use it for 2 black and a green to sacrifice a creature and draw a card. So that's our sort of mana base. And obviously, if you're looking to improve the deck, you could play around with this, so you get maybe lands that would generate both green and black mana in standard, because we're assuming that obviously any modifications you're going to make to this deck, for the purpose of this video anyway, is going to be standard legal. So that's the first bit. Then we move on to the actual birthing pod component here. So this is really obviously our engine to our deck. So the key thing with birthing pod, just so we're sort of clear on how this works, is, here we are. So what we do here is we sacrifice a creature, and we search our library for a creature card with a converted mana cost equal to 1 plus the sacrificed creature's converted mana cost. We put that onto the battlefield and then shuffle our library. So that comes straight into play, untap that particular creature that we're bringing in. Costs 1 and green Phyrexian mana, so we can play that using 2 life. And with this deck, as I mentioned in the unboxing, you really need to be of the school of thought of using your life as a resource. This costs 2 and a green to cast in the first place. So again, it uses green Phyrexian mana to do that. So you have the choice again of using 2 life instead of green mana. On the downside of this, the ability itself is actually, you can only activate it any time you would cast a sorcery, so it's not instant speed. So you have 2 of those. Now, what else works well with this is the fact you've got 2 Diabolic Tutors here. So with this deck, there is a possibility of having more birthing pods in it, if you want to do that, to give you more chance of actually getting hold of a birthing pod in the course of a game. Another choice is to use something like Diabolic Tutor. So Diabolic Tutor here is being used to search out for basically any card in your library. So it can be to search out anything, and it brings it into your hand. Now it's the same cost as birthing pod, so you could argue if you were using it to hunt down a birthing pod, then you might as well just put another birthing pod in the deck. But the point with the Diabolic Tutor is it gives you a choice, because you may already have as many birthing pods as you need, and therefore you can use that to hunt something else down. So I think it is real important if you're going to tweak this deck. One area to look at is the relationship between the number of birthing pods and the number of Diabolic Tutors. Moving on, we have a number of key creatures which are 4-ofs. And these creatures sort of again help to, in effect, give a base for this deck. 2 of the creatures are of converted mana cost 2, and one is 1. So you've got the one green young wolf, and then the Strangleroot Geist, which is 2 green, and the Viridian Emissary is 1 and a green. Strangleroot Geist has Undying and Haste, so obviously that effectively bounces back if it leaves and dies with no +1/+1 counters on it. And then the young wolf also has Undying, but it doesn't have Haste on it. So it doesn't effectively, with the Strangleroot Geist, what's happening is it comes into play and you can attack straight away with that, or use it in combat because it's not got summoning sickness because it has Haste. With the Viridian Emissary, if that ends up in the graveyard, you can actually then go away and search your library for basic land cards. So that's sort of some good mana fixing. So that's actually connected to the mana base. But the other interesting thing with these cards is, if we ignore for the moment the Perilous Mere, really the starting point for a lot of our singles here is 3 mana. So we've got the 3 mana singles here, 4 mana, and then there's also a set of Skin Renders because they're so useful. We've got multiple copies of those. Stinger Fling Spider is 5. These are all 5. And then 6, and then finally 7. So in combination with the Birthing Pod, you need to sort of get on these sort of steps of the ladder. So what you're doing is you're, say, sacrificing 2 mana creature to the Birthing Pod, which means you can then go and find a 3 mana creature. If you sacrifice then the 3 mana creature, you can go and find the 4 mana, and so on up the ladder. So it's obviously really important to have a number of 2 1 mana creatures as feeding for this Birthing Pod. Without these, it's going to be very difficult to start working your way up. You'd effectively have to hard cast everything. So that's why there are sort of multiple copies of these. But in addition, of course, their abilities help when they're just played straight and not necessarily used in combination with the Birthing Pod. We also have things like Hex Parasite, which is going to interact with our Undying creatures and can remove counters from them just about when they're going to either hit the graveyard or before that happens. And of course that creature then can return again to undie a second time if it's had its +1/+1 counter removed from it. Obviously that artifact creature in itself could be a target for removal, so you could find that may well remove that ability if that's targeted fairly early on in the game. We've also got a piece of equipment here which we can attach, and what happens is if the equipped creature is sacrificed for any reason, then this creature deals 1 damage to a target creature or player. Now this idea of doing 1 damage also fits in nicely with any morbid abilities. You'll notice once we get over to this side, where these are the creatures that we are also going to be grabbing from our library, a few of these have morbid on them. Now the point is, if we've already effectively killed a creature to our Birthing Pod, that morbid ability would then become active if we happen to play that. So again, another interesting synergy between the Birthing Pod and morbid. You'll also notice most, if not all of these, have, apart from I think this one here, have enters the battlefield triggers. And of course, again, it's really important. And this is the whole point, is that we are choosing these based on their enters the battlefield ability in response to a particular threat from our opponent. With the skin render, this is such a useful removal ability attached to this creature that we have 3 of these in the deck. So it's one of the few of these sort of enter the battlefield type creatures where there's more than one copy. Also, the Bloodgift Demon, which I've put in here at the 5 mana point, doesn't have an enter the battlefield ability. It's flying, so we have evasion, and it's a 5/4. But what we have to remember is at the beginning of our upkeep, the target player, or a target player, draws a card and loses 1 life. So we can use that for card draw at the expense of a life resource. So that's the important thing to look for in this deck, is to understand how the enters the battlefield, the morbid, the undying, and other things like, I think one of these also has on it when the creature enters, here it is, when Solemn Simulacrum dies, you may draw a card. So you also get one in here which has a death to dying trigger when it hit, or anything that says when this card enters the graveyard. And of course, again, that's a synergy with the birthing pod. I can't remember if I mentioned, we've also got 3 Doom Blades, which are obviously going to help deal with target non-black creatures. Now, in terms of how the sideboard that you get interacts with this, so if we quickly just look at this sideboard. In the deck there is a Perilous Mere in the standard deck. And with that, if it goes into the graveyard from the battlefield, it deals 2 damage to the target creature or player. With a Mere's Sire, if this is put into the graveyard, it puts a 1/1 colourless Mere artifact creature token into the battlefield. So that's useful where you're going up against say aggressive decks, and you need a sort of 1/1 just blocker, something like that. To sort of replace the fact that this has gone out. So you use this to block, and then it's been, effectively killed, but then back in its place comes an artifact creature token. We've got a second copy of Wake Dancer, which is already in the deck. So that'll put a 2/2 black zombie creature into play if it's got Morbid on it and then enters the battlefield ability. We have Grave Digger, so this can be used to bring creatures back from the graveyard. Again, going up against any decks which was likely to put creatures into your graveyard very quickly, then these sort of cards are useful to sideboard in. Another one like that, the Entomber Exarch. So this returns a target creature from the graveyard to your hand. Also, you can use it to get a target opponent to reveal his or her hand, and then you can choose a non-creature card from it, and they can discard that card. So that will get rid of things like planeswalkers, land, artifacts, things like that. This is good if you're going up against equipment decks. Sideboard that in. Then you get a number of cards which are will use basic removal outside of the birthing pod interaction. So we have a Dismember here, so this will get rid of a large creature. We have a Beast Within, so this can be used to destroy a target permanent, and you can destroy your own permanents with it and give yourself a 3/3 green beast creature, or if you've got a really serious threat, or you can use it against your opponent and have to put up with the fact you've given them a 3/3 green beast creature token. But it could be good against something really serious, like say a Titan or a Planeswalker. We've got a Despise here, again for dealing with planeswalkers. And then a group of Distresses. So again, you know, you're attacking your opponent's hand with these. So they can all be side in. And then finally, something that is obviously going to come up is how you're going to deal with you know, blue, black decks, which make it very difficult for you to cast your spells. So this card will basically prevent you being countered for a turn. So that's very useful, and there's that. Not surprisingly, there's 3 copies of those. And then finally, with this, what it's nice to do is obviously think about ways in which the deck can be altered. You know, beyond just obviously bringing in cards from the sideboard, it's obviously nice to consider how you can modify the deck as a whole and just tweak it over time. Some of the suggestions that they come up with is things like Oxidus Scrap Melter, Shieldred the Whispering One is another one, and Geralt's Messenger. And the point with a lot of these cards is when you're looking to improve this deck, it's a good idea to sort of go through the Gatherer and basically look for any creatures that have a enter the battlefield trigger, or some sort of dies trigger, or something like Morbid is another thing. And also, you know, go through and maybe sort of check out some of the other Undying creatures, which could be of use in this deck. The other thing you can do is literally just go through your collection and see what sort of cards you've got that might be interesting to just play around with. This is what I was able to come up with just with my sort of collection. I've got some of these may not necessarily be you know, good enough to substitute out, but it's just interesting to see what you have options you have open to you. And remember with this, it's pretty important if you're going to be substituting out creatures, to try and make sure you've got to make sure you really do it, keep to the mana curve on this, because of the importance of interaction between the one-offs here and your birthing pod. So one creature we've got with Morbid on here that I found in my collection is Gravetiller Worm, which is a 4/4 for 5/1, 5 and a green, fairly high to casting cost there, but when it comes into play, if something's died that turn, which it would have done if you've sort of got this through feeding birthing pods, say what would you have, 5 mana creature to go and hunt this down, it would actually come in with 4/1/1 counters on it, so that would make it an 8/8. On the smaller end of the scale, you've got something like Black Cat. So this could replace one of your 1/1s for 2 mana, and this simply has an ability on it when it dies, a target opponent discards a card at random. Something fairly simple to play around with. Another interesting card from Innistrad, Gutter Grime. This is an enchantment, so that it wouldn't be a sort of really a substitute for this side of the board as such. It's more useful because if you've got a lot of non-token creatures dying, you put slime counters on this and you can use it to generate ooze creature tokens. We've got Lumber Knots, similar sort of concept I suppose, in that this does things as creatures die. So it's not directly interacting with the birthing pod, although you could use the birthing pod to obviously cast this. But what happens is every time a creature dies, which would be happening quite regularly if you're using birthing pod a lot, it's going to put a 1/1 counter onto this, so it's going to pump it up. Something interesting I found in M12 was Sutured Ghoul. So this has trample. It costs 4 colourless and 3 black, so that's 7 mana to cost, so pretty high casting cost. So this would be in your sort of mere battle sphere slot. And as it enters the battlefield, you exile any number of creature cards from your graveyard, so you could have quite a few in there if you've been working your way through using your birthing pod. And Sutured Ghoul's power is equal to the total power of the exiled cards, and its toughness is equal to their total toughness. And we've got Ghoul Tree. So this is an interesting one in that it costs 1 less to cast for each creature card in your graveyard. So you could obviously this sort of 7 colourless and 1 green, so sort of 8 mana to cast, could be reduced because of the fact you're going to have a lot of creatures in your graveyard that have been sacked to the birthing pod, and you reduce down this casting card, which in turn this could the birthing pod could be used to cast this reducing casting cost, and then you have a 10/10 in play. So there's just some sort of ideas I came up with, just literally going through my collection. So there we have it, really, this sort of spiraling doom birthing pod style deck. Real interesting interactions between the birthing pod and enters the battlefield, enters the graveyard, morbid, and also the Undying. So definitely, check this out, and just have a play around with the different abilities and how they interact. Okay, bye for now.